Hello everyone! The third week of the Luna 4 beta has finally arrived, and for those of you not accustomed to Genshin betas, version 3 of the beta cycles are generally when the most significant character kit changes are implemented, and this time is no different as many changes were made to Columbina, Zibai, and Illuga. A mix of nerfs and buffs were added, some were expected, but some were surprising, at least to me. So let's quickly go over what the changes were and how they affect the character's overall power level compared to before. For all of the changes, I will show the Chinese version of the text from HOYOMiX Cat because it is the most accurate, as the English text version is just not updated with some of the changes, but of course I will provide a summary of the changes in English. First, let's go over the main star of the patch, Columbina. Based on the numbers of her initial beta kit, I think most people in the theory crafting community agreed that Columbina is extremely powerful, especially when paired with other lunar characters, and many did expect and wanted a nerf to her base kit numbers just for balancing purposes. And this is exactly what happened. Columbina's main source of personal damage is in her elemental skill, where she does a lunar attack every 6 seconds depending on the most commonly triggered lunar reaction within those 6 seconds on that team. The multipliers of all 3 versions of this attack, Lunar Charge, Lunar Bloom, and Lunar Crystallize, were slightly decreased. The numbers shown here are for talent level 10. And that's pretty much it for the C0 Columbina changes, other than a slight multiplier buff to her enhanced charge attack that consumes a Verdant Dew, which just benefits main DPS Columbina. But of course the skill nerf is the most significant change, so how much worse did C0 Columbina get with these changes? I did see some people being really concerned about the nerfs, but in reality this nerf didn't really affect Columbina's strength at all. For example, in Nefer teams, the Columbina nerfs results in about a 3k DPS decrease at KQM standard, as even though the multiplier of Columbina's Lunar Bloom hit was technically the most decreased since it hits 5 times, a lot of the damage from these attacks actually comes from each of the 5 hits being buffed by Lalma's burst quills, not the actual raw multipliers. And for Flynn's teams, they got a 2 to 3k DPS nerf with Columbina dealing a little less personal damage. So overall, in the grand scheme of things, there's not much of a difference. Both Flynn's and Nefer are still really strong with Columbina. And of course these slight damage nerfs will translate over to if Columbina is supporting any other DPS, either as the only lunar character or pair with another character like Anefa. Very minor nerf, doesn't really matter. Columbina's constellations also got a few changes. All of her constellations elevate the team's lunar reaction damage bonus, with elevation being a final multiplier buff to damage. With the latest patch, they redistributed these elevation buffs. They decreased it for C1, C3, C4, and C5, while increasing it for C2 and C6. The total elevation you get from getting all 6 constellations is still the same, but now you just get more from C2 and C6 specifically. In addition, Columbina's C2 got a little stronger. She now gets more HP and grants more buffs to the active character in specifically Lunar Charged and Lunar Crystallized teams, as the HP scaling for those buffs got increased with the Lunar Bloom buff being unchanged. Next, let's move on to the Zibai changes. Her A1, which increases the damage of the Lunar Crystallized portion of her special skill, got buffed with an increased defense scaling from 40% to 60%. The current assumption is still that her A1 passive is a quill buff, meaning the damage increase is just adding some flat damage, so her A1 getting a buff is just a small damage increase. Other than that, the rest of the changes are for Zibai's constellations. Her C1 extra damage to the lunar crystallized portion of her first special skill in her enhanced state is getting an extra 20% damage bonus. For her C2, instead of giving Zibai 50% defense, it now gives the entire team 30% damage bonus to lunar crystallized reaction damage. In addition, the portion that enhances her A1 quill buff of her special skill is getting a big increase from 100% defense scaling to 550%. This C2 was previously pretty bad when compared to the typical damage gain you get from getting a C2 of a modern DPS, but with these changes, her C2 is much better than before. C4 is being changed to basically give a little bit more damage to the lunar crystallized hit of Zibai's N4. It got slightly better, but in terms of overall damage gain, this constellation is still kinda whatever. And C6 now increases the stack accumulation Zibai gets. It's now 50%, increasing from 40%. So overall, Zibai got some positive changes in her kit, which I personally expected. But what I didn't expect was them nerfing Illuga, which basically means a nerf to Zibai because Illuga is a niche support pretty much just for her. Simply put, in both his burst and his passive, they decreased the EM scaling of his burst quill buffs for specifically direct lunar crystallized damage, the portion which was really only fully taken advantage of by Zibai. So if we take into account the slight Zibai kit buffs and the Columbina and Illuga nerfs, how much worse did the best Zibai teams get? Well, judging from multiple calcs I've seen at KQM standard, about a 5k DPS nerf. Definitely a little bit bigger of a nerf compared to Flint and Nefer, but even though the nerfs look drastic, 5k DPS is still honestly not that big of a nerf in the grand scheme of things. Zibai still looks strong, especially if you have constellations on her 4-star supports. And that's everything you need to know about the recent beta changes. Ultimately, the nerfs to the base kits didn't really do much to affect any of the characters' power level. Columbina is still an incredibly strong support that works extremely well with other lunar characters, but still works fine alone. And then Zibai plus Illuga is still a solid lunar team utilizing the new lunar crystallized reaction. Considering how tame these changes were, this may just be the general power level that Hoyo wants these characters to be, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are little to no changes in the upcoming weeks, but of course we shall see. If you enjoyed this quick update video, leave a like on the video or sub to the channel so you don't miss out on any future ones. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and with that, I hope you all have a wonderful day.